You're not broke because you're irresponsible. You're broke because the rules changed quietly while you kept playing by the old ones. And if you've ever felt financially exhausted despite doing everything right, this story is going to explain exactly why. You did what you were told to do. You studied, you worked, you stayed responsible. And yet, somehow, it still feels like one small mistake could unravel everything. Not a dramatic failure. Not bankruptcy. Just that constant pressure sitting quietly in the background, reminding you that there's no real margin, no room to breathe, no room to relax. That's the part nobody talks about. You don't wake up and decide to sabotage your future. It happens slowly, invisibly, through choices that feel normal, reasonable, even smart. You buy things that make life easier. You upgrade things that still work. You spend money not to show off, but to keep up, to stay functional, to feel like you're moving forward. And none of it feels reckless in the moment. Until you look up and realize that normal spending has quietly become a trap. One that doesn't make you poor enough for sympathy, but never lets you feel safe either. You're not struggling in the way people expect. You're functioning, you're productive, you're doing fine, and yet, you're constantly on edge. That contradiction is where so many people are living right now. You don't feel broke, but you don't feel secure. Every plan depends on nothing going wrong. Every month ends with just enough relief to start the cycle again. And the most unsettling part is how invisible it all is. To other people, and eventually, even to yourself. Welcome to Quietly Broke. This channel exists to talk about the things that don't show up on social media or financial advice blogs. The quiet pressure behind normal life. The habits that look harmless but slowly drain your future. And the belief system that taught an entire generation that buying things equals progress. If this already feels uncomfortably familiar, make sure to subscribe to Quietly Broke. It's the best way to support the channel and help keep these conversations going. Because once you start questioning what normal really costs, you can't unsee it. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. Which one feels closer to your life right now? A. You're doing okay, but everything feels fragile. B. You're constantly stressed, even though it looks like you shouldn't be. Comment A or B below. That feeling of fragility doesn't come from bad luck or weak discipline. It comes from something much quieter and far more powerful. The way we were taught to understand money, progress, and success in the first place. Most people believe their spending habits are the result of personal choice. That they buy what they buy because they want it, need it, or earned it. But if you zoom out, a different pattern appears. Long before you ever had a paycheck, you were taught a script. One that linked buying to improvement and spending to momentum. From an early age, progress was shown to you as something you could purchase. New clothes meant a fresh start. New gadgets meant you were keeping up. Convenience meant you were doing well enough to afford ease. Over time, consumption stopped being about solving problems and started being about confirming identity. Buying something new didn't just give you an object. It gave you a feeling of movement in a world where standing still feels dangerous. This is why spending feels emotional even when it looks logical. Each purchase delivers reassurance. A quiet signal that you're not falling behind. That you're still participating in modern life the way you're supposed to. And when long-term security feels uncertain, those short-term signals become incredibly powerful. The system understands this. Advertising doesn't sell products anymore. It sells relief. Relief from insecurity. Relief from comparison. Relief from the fear that everyone else is advancing while you're stuck. Every message is carefully designed to make you feel just slightly behind. Then offer a solution you can buy. Budgeting advice rarely addresses this layer. It treats spending as a math equation when it's actually a psychological loop. You can know exactly what you should be doing and still feel compelled to buy. Because the urge isn't about logic. It's about comfort and control. When life feels unstable, buying something feels like taking action, even if that action quietly works against you. Upgrades are especially effective at exploiting this instinct. They're framed not as replacements, but as necessities for relevance. Your current phone, car, or lifestyle didn't suddenly stop working. It just stopped signaling progress. And in a culture that equates progress with worth, that signal matters more than functionality. Convenience follows the same pattern. Time-saving purchases are marketed as success rewards. If you're busy, stressed, or overwhelmed, spending money to make life easier feels justified. But ease purchased repeatedly becomes dependency. And dependency removes resilience. None of this means people are foolish or irresponsible. It means they were conditioned. Conditioned to believe that spending is how you stay afloat in a fast-moving world. The problem is that this script was written for an economy that no longer exists. One where wages grew alongside costs and stability followed effort. When that script keeps running in a different reality, the result isn't comfort. It's quiet financial tension that never fully goes away. Once you recognize how deeply that script runs, the next question becomes unavoidable. Where is the money actually going? And why does it never seem to create real breathing room? The answer isn't hidden in one reckless decision. It's spread across a handful of patterns that feel harmless on their own but become destructive when combined. These are the quiet leaks that drain financial momentum without ever setting off alarms. The first leak comes from payments that feel small enough to ignore. Monthly costs are framed to look manageable, even reasonable, but when life is built around obligations instead of ownership, flexibility disappears. You don't feel the full weight up front, yet you carry it forward month after month, adjusting your life around commitments you can't easily escape. The second leak is validation spending. These purchases aren't about need or even enjoyment. They're about signaling competence, stability, or success to the outside world. Clothing, accessories, or experiences that quietly say, "I'm doing fine." The problem is that validation never lasts. It has to be renewed constantly, turning identity into an ongoing expense rather than something internally grounded. The third leak comes from experiences financed with future stress. Moments that promise relief, escape, or happiness now, while quietly extending pressure into the months ahead. The experience itself may be enjoyable, but the aftermath lingers. What was meant to recharge you becomes another source of background anxiety, turning memories into obligations. Then there's the upgrade leak, driven by fear rather than necessity. Nothing breaks, nothing fails, something newer simply appears, and suddenly, what you already own feels outdated, even though it still works perfectly. These upgrades don't improve life in meaningful ways, but they preserve a sense of relevance in a culture that treats standing still as falling behind. The final leak is convenience spending, the most invisible of all. Small payments made to avoid discomfort, save time, or reduce friction, individually forgettable, collectively enormous. These habits rarely feel indulgent, which is why they repeat without reflection. Over time, convenience turns into dependence, and dependence quietly raises the cost of everyday life. None of these patterns look like financial self-destruction. That's what makes them so effective. Each one feels justified, each one feels earned, and because they're normalized, they rarely trigger concern. But together, they do something subtle and dangerous. They erase margin, they reduce optionality, they turn income into maintenance instead of leverage. You're no longer building towards something, you're holding things in place. This is why so many people feel stuck despite earning more than they ever have. The leaks don't cause collapse, they cause compression. They squeeze the future until progress feels slower than effort, and stability always feels just out of reach. And when that pressure builds quietly for long enough, it starts to show up everywhere else. And once that pressure has been building quietly for long enough, it stops feeling like a money issue and starts reshaping the way you live, think, and relate to the world around you. This is the cost that never shows up on a bank statement. The cost of carrying constant low-level financial tension. When your finances have no real margin, your nervous system knows it, even if your spreadsheets don't. Every decision begins to feel heavier. Every unexpected expense feels personal. You're not panicking, but you're never fully relaxed either. Living this way slowly trains your brain into survival mode. You start thinking shorter term, not because you lack ambition, but because long-term planning feels fragile. It's hard to commit to big goals when one small disruption could knock everything off balance. So you hesitate, you delay, you choose the safer option, even when it costs you growth. This pressure doesn't stay contained. It leaks into relationships, work, and health. You become less patient, not because you're irritable, but because your mental bandwidth is already occupied. Money stress hums in the background of conversations, decisions, And nights where sleep comes slower than it should. Even good news feels muted when it's immediately followed by calculations about what it will cost. Over time, this creates a subtle loss of agency. You stop asking what you actually want and start asking what you can maintain. Choices become about preservation instead of direction. You take jobs you don't love because stability matters more than fulfillment. You avoid risks not because they're unwise, but because you can't afford instability. Life narrows, not dramatically, but gradually. The most damaging part is how personal it begins to feel. When effort doesn't translate into security, people internalize the gap. They assume they're doing something wrong. That if they were just a little smarter, a little more disciplined, things would finally click. But the pressure they're feeling isn't a personal flaw. It's the predictable outcome of living in a system where normal participation requires constant output just to stay in place. This is why doing well often feels empty. From the outside, everything looks fine. You're functioning, you're contributing, you're checking the boxes. But inside, there's a persistent sense that you're one surprise away from trouble. That feeling quietly erodes confidence and hope, even in people who appear successful. The tragedy isn't that people spend too much. It's that the way modern life is structured makes it incredibly easy to spend in ways that trade peace for appearances. And when peace disappears, no amount of income feels like enough. This is the hidden toll of quiet financial pressure. Not collapse, but exhaustion. Not failure, but fragility. And once you understand that, the question shifts from how to earn more to something far more important: how to stop bleeding energy, attention, and agency into a system that never gives them back. And when that question finally surfaces, something subtle but powerful begins to change in the way you see money, choice, and control. This is where the buy-nothing rebellion actually lives. Not in deprivation, not in rules, not in pretending you don't want nice things. It lives in the decision to stop automatically saying yes to a script that was written for a different world. Buying nothing doesn't mean freezing your life or rejecting comfort. It means slowing the moment between impulse and action. It means asking whether a purchase is truly moving you forward or simply maintaining the illusion that you are. Over time, that pause becomes a form of power. When you stop spending reflexively, margin begins to appear. Not just financial margin, but mental margin. Fewer obligations mean fewer background worries. Less consumption means fewer things demanding your attention. You're no longer constantly reacting to payments, upgrades, or the quiet pressure to keep up. Space opens up where stress used to live. That space changes how you define wealth. Wealth stops being about accumulation and starts being about flexibility. The ability to say no. The ability to take a risk. The ability to walk away from something that no longer fits. Real security isn't having more. It's needing less to feel stable. This shift doesn't require perfection. It starts with awareness, with noticing which purchases genuinely improve your life and which ones simply anesthetize discomfort or signal status. You don't have to eliminate everything. You just have to stop letting spending be the default response to stress, boredom, or insecurity. Over time, something unexpected happens. Confidence becomes quieter and more durable. It no longer depends on what you own or how you're perceived. Peace of mind replaces the constant low-grade anxiety that comes from living on the edge of affordability. You begin to feel richer. Not because your account balance explodes overnight, but because your life feels less fragile. The rebellion isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It happens privately, in small decisions that compound. Each time you say no to something that doesn't serve you, you're saying yes to your future self. You're choosing agency over appearance, intention over impulse. The system may still be expensive. The culture may still reward consumption. But you don't have to participate in every part of it. You get to decide what you buy into. And once you experience what it feels like to live with margin instead of constant pressure, it becomes very hard to go back. At the heart of everything we've talked about is a simple but uncomfortable truth. Most people aren't struggling because they're careless with money. They're struggling because they're living inside a system that quietly rewards consumption and punishes restraint. When spending becomes the default response to stress, boredom, or insecurity, financial pressure stops being a phase and starts becoming a permanent condition. The deeper lesson here isn't about buying less for the sake of deprivation. It's about reclaiming control. When you slow down your spending and question what actually improves your life, you create margin. And margin is where clarity, flexibility, and peace of mind live. Without it, even high income feels fragile. With it, progress becomes possible again. Applied to real life, this means shifting your focus away from appearances and toward resilience. It means treating convenience as a choice, not a necessity. It means allowing yourself to opt out of purchases that don't align with the life you're trying to build, even if they're socially normal. Over time, those small decisions compound into something powerful: stability that doesn't depend on constant earning or constant upgrading. Now I'd like to hear from you. Which matters more to you right now, feeling successful or feeling secure? Please share your answer in the comments so others can reflect as well. And if this conversation resonated with you, consider subscribing to Quietly Broke. Your support helps keep these honest discussions going and motivates the channel to create more content like this.